Welcome to The Tea with me, Myriam Francois. For our last episode of this season and of 2024, we are returning to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. We began the season speaking to Al Jazeera correspondent Yumna El Saeed about reporting from the front line in Gaza. And in today's episode, we're returning to this theme, this time through the eyes of an award-winning Palestinian filmmaker, Yousef Hammash. Yousef is known for his evocative documentaries such as One Day in Gaza and Gaza Daring to Dream. As a key member of Channel 4 News since 2018 and a former advocacy officer for the Norwegian Refugee Council, his work powerfully highlights the reality of life under occupation and throughout this genocide. Just a few weeks ago, Yousef won the award for TV News Story of the Year for his heartbreaking report Inside the Gaza Siege. He's also won a BAFTA, an Emmy, and last week, the British Journalist Award. Yousef, welcome to The Tea. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work that you do.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you.
You came out of Gaza in April. You'd been reporting from inside Gaza. Now you're reporting from outside Gaza. How do you feel about that, being on the outside now, watching others who are still there?
Yeah, first, I prefer the first one, to be reporting from inside Gaza. Unfortunately, it's not an option anymore. And now I'm trying to fulfill my responsibility as a journalist and keep reporting. Because, I have the resources, I have the connections, I have the trust, and I have the access, and I want to make sure that this story is still told. People who doesn't understand what is Gaza, it's a narrow piece of land, 360 kilometers, have over 2 million people. The longest distance you can drive in a car is like 25 minutes from Beit Hanun to Rafah. This is the longest distance, which is 40 kilometers. This is all of Gaza. From east to west is 7 kilometers. It's just like a small box that contains 2 million people. Our world is in these two edges. Rafah border with the Egyptians and Erez checkpoint with the Israeli occupation. And in between is the planet for 2 million people who doesn't know exactly what's going on outside. And trust me, if there is no internet, we wouldn't know that we are part of this planet, at least the recent generations.
And that's because something you just mentioned there, which is that most people in Gaza cannot leave Gaza. So tell us a little bit about that for people who don't really understand what life is like for people born and raised in Gaza. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people probably just thinking, well, why can't you just leave and come back?
I wish that's the case. I really wish if at least people have the option. Also, it's good to mention that it's not since 18 years as a siege. Gaza, since the early 50s, is a concentration camp, simply, after a Nakba and pushing thousands and thousands of Palestinians, including my family. I'm a refugee from Al-Majd city, which is now called Ashkelon, which is 5 kilometers away from the northern part of Gaza. And imagine that 32 years of my life, I was seeing my old city where I am from my window, but I never been able to reach it because there is that insane border. And again, I wish we have the option to leave. And again, when people have been pushed, since thousands of people have been pushed to Gaza,
Yeah.
there I could say that a concentration camp start to be made and designed in these refugee camps alongside, starting from northern part of Gaza and Jabalia refugee camp, which is the biggest in Palestine. And then you have in the middle area, Al-Burej, Al-Nusayrat, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and even in Rafah have several camps, Shabura and another 2 camps. And people, when they hear about that, they think we are in camps, which what we see now after this extermination in Gaza.
Right. So people think camps, they think tents.
Yeah.
They think like the displaced people that we see in other parts of the world. But that's not what you mean when you say refugee camp, because you were born in Jabalia, which is, as you say, the biggest refugee camp in Palestine. Tell us a little bit about Jabalia and growing up in Jabalia.
Refugee camps in Gaza in general, all over Palestine, similar, I think, to also the same in Lebanon and Syria. It's a block of concrete. It's city within cities. For example, if you're talking about Jabalia camp, it's part of Jabalia city, but it became bigger than the city. You're talking about 72% of the population are refugees.
Yeah.
Also in Gaza, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
So basically, the expanding of these refugee camps, because at the beginning, everything had been established through the UN. UNRWA was in charge of all of the facilities there, and this is related to sanitation, food, education, health, everything, basically everything under UNRWA management, which is, now we understand how the Israelis are.
Well, so for people who haven't been following closely, UNRWA has since been designated by Israel as having somehow participated or had some staff members allegedly participate in October the 7th and have halted all UNRWA operations, right, in Gaza currently.
This is just, it was just a death sentence. It's simply as it is.
Because...
Listen, our life is based on UNRWA services.
Right.
Not only in Gaza, or even also in West Bank and in Jerusalem and other places, like even Lebanon and Syria. UNRWA is operating in 5 different regions, supporting millions of Palestinians. When you are banning UNRWA, which is the main service provider for us as refugees, the PA will never be that body that to serve that amount of people because it's out of capacity. It's
so the PA meaning the Palestinian Authority.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, just for those who aren't following. So the Palestinian Authority is the party that is in charge of the West Bank, but does not control Gaza currently, although we'll come back to that because there are now talks that may be in the pipeline. So you're saying that in all of these areas, essentially, UNRWA has been providing the services that people rely on, right?
Even since October 7th, when all this madness started in Gaza, no one have the capacity that UNRWA have, with warehouses, logistic capacities, lorries, workers, humanitarian workers, because they have over 12,000. So they have the capacity to serve. They, for example, people when they want to have a sense of safety, since we saw that in all, even previous wars in Gaza, people seek safety usually in UNRWA school because it's under the United Nations umbrella. They feel more protected. They feel more sense of safety. Unfortunately, they don't know that. That's what we are looking for, to have the sense of safety, while we know deeply, me at least, that the Israelis, they doesn't care where you are from Norway school or even inside the hospital. There is no protection, there is no immunity except for the Israelis to do whatever they want.
It would have been considered one of the red lines that this particular chapter of the conflict has completely eradicated, right? So we knew that there were bombings previously of UN schools, but they were really heavily condemned. And I feel that there was a real sense of the international community showing so much outrage previously, whereas it does seem this time around that it's like, and another school's been bombed, and now all 33 hospitals in Gaza have been attacked, and somehow it sort of almost doesn't register. It's like a blip.
Unfortunately, what we are seeing, the immunity that the Israelis having, doing whatever they want, exceeding any limits. There is there's nothing called red line, or there's nothing. They exceed all of these limits, and that's really dangerous because that's the experience with the history was telling us. This is what history is telling us. If you allow it in one place, it will be happen in another place. And so the intensity of bombing that we had experienced and witnessed from the Israelis, the slaughter for all these children, women, families were wiped out. The amount of bombardment that they bombed Gaza with, this is giving an indicator any other war is going to be really worse. What world have seen before is comparing to what's coming. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
I get along with that when the Israelis banned water, food, electricity, fuel, everything since the beginning of the war. And it's like this first day.
Yeah.
The world was just watching. Imagine a place was under siege since 18 years. And then you announce a war on it, and then you ban anything to get in.
I still cannot get my head around this, Yousef. So we, the international community, the world, we literally know and have known for months now that no water, aid, or food is getting into Gaza, and we're still just sort of watching. I mean, I I dare ask you how you feel now that you're sat here watching with us, how you feel about that.
I just feel the inhumanity that people have, unfortunately, when they look for this situation taking a place. It's just like live view. You are watching slaughtering on a live view. And
Yeah.
I think we need to understand or to revise the sense of humanity we have when we look for people who are getting killed on a daily basis. And we are seeing that it's not something hidden. When the Israelis, there's a purpose even also for banning international journalists to
Right.
going to Gaza, is not that international journalist would take risk more than a journalist, a Gazan
Yes.
journalist. Definitely not.
Definitely
Never
not.
happened. I work with international journalists since more than a decade, so I really get it and understand it.
Yeah.
But people here would trust someone with that
Well,
tune, with that shoes, with
it's
that
funny you should
face.
say that because, of course, it's been really hard to get coverage of other parts of the world, not quite as hard as Palestine, but Syria recently saw the arrival of our savior, Western journalists, to report on a story which, of course, local journalists couldn't possibly be relied upon to tell the truth about. And lo and behold, CNN seems to be in a little bit of hot water about that. I mean, look, we're joking about it, of course, but it is also such an irony, isn't it, that we've literally been talking about the ways in which the fact there are no Western journalists reporting on Gaza means that we can't get accurate information. And now we've seen one of CNN's sort of leading journalists enter Syria and report essentially a fake news story. I mean,
It's not only that.
tell us more, Yousef.
World is biased. We need to understand that. We need to reconciliate with that. And we need to understand that European, Western will understand and trust Western, European, Americans, other people who like, they feel them more. They have the same, I don't know what they have together, but they wear the same shoes and they trust that shoes.
Yes.
Despite that, it's not ethical somehow when you classify human even based on their jobs. A journalist who's local, do you think that any international journalist would do a job, whatever it was, even how small it is, or what, how exclusive, mad it is, without a local journalist doing it actually?
Well, you and I both know that that doesn't happen, right? You and I both know that whenever we are sent as Western journalists into these terrains, we are always paired up with what is often called a fixer, which we both know is code for a local journalist who's usually much less well paid than we are and who is asked to take all kinds of risks that we are not. So,
I worked as a fixer for a couple of years.
Yes. Or as we should say, a journalist who just happened to have all the innate knowledge.
That title. So basically, without a resource on the ground and someone who have the access, the knowledge, the information, the contacts,
yeah,
the resources, you cannot do it.
Indeed.
But people who look for, just see that face. If you are an international journalist,
totally,
you cannot do it. You cannot take your bag, go somewhere, Syria, Iraq,
yes,
Lebanon,
and
Palestine, and come back with stories.
Yes, agreed. We call that parachute journalism, right? Which I think has been heavily criticized, and yet we still have sort of variants of that, I think, today. Just for anyone who was wondering what we were talking about, the Clarissa Ward story, who is one of the lead presenters at CNN, Clarissa was sent to Syria. She reported on a story where she was alleged to have found a Syrian detainee in a prison cell, and it turned out that he was a former Assad tortionary. So in other words, it was all a setup. And, who knows the full details.
Maybe she had been fooled. She didn't verify her resources.
It could be. But I would wager to you that this is an example of a story that a local journalist probably wouldn't make the mistake
Definitely.
of. Just putting that out there. I want to ask you about being a filmmaker at this time, because as a fellow filmmaker, I was thinking a lot about your conundrum, right? Which is you make films to tell stories, but over the last 16 months, you've been asked to continuously tell stories of the genocide of your own people, right? And we are talking about 16 months in. So I know that maybe in the beginning, we start off with the thinking of like, well, our stories can change the world. Our stories can make a difference. And I just wanted to ask you how you feel about filmmaking right now, because what have we not seen, Yousef? What hasn't been said? What more do they need to see?
I don't think there is anything more we need to show them, but I think they don't understand how it takes or how much it takes to let them see. That's another thing. Getting the footage from Gaza, leading on a team there, or navigate all these risks. Like the main film I'm working on now is How to Survive a War Zone. I have following 7 different contributors and going through their life since a couple of months. I just finished a few days ago filming. I'll show it to you later. For a couple of months, I had 2 things to deal with. First, experiencing and witnessing all these contributors, mainly children, like Rinad, chef, Zakaria in the hospital. I had a really decent contributor, which is a young female who had a new baby born. And you go through their life circumstances during that madness around them. And from here, from London, I'm going through the footage, I just witnessed all of these people getting thinner and thinner and thinner. Every time, when I just compare previous visits to film them with the new footage, it's like something serious is happening with these people.
To death,
Exactly.
People
One of them have a cooking show. On the other hand, I have camera operators on the ground who are taking really huge risks. It's clear that journalists are getting targeted. Is like one of the first targeted people in Gaza. You just look at the number and understand the human history never witnessed that. And that's also give the right for the people on the ground who navigate any security stuff, include journalists, part of them. So I remember, even personally, I had to experience that when a former Israeli prime minister mentioned me in one of his interviews because he didn't like any of my stories, or
he didn't appreciate a Gazan voice on Channel 4 News, no doubt.
I think so.
Maybe.
I don't think everyone would like it.
I'm guessing. Hunch.
I don't care. I do storytelling. I report. I tell the story of my own people.
Of course.
Not everyone like it. Both sides. Sometimes even Palestine doesn't like what I'm doing because for me, I humanize people. Whatever they say it. If they are saying it's Hamas who killed us, then it's Hamas who killed them. I don't care. It's there.
Yes.
It's them who said that. Our role, and this is my job here, to make sure that there is no misinterpretation for these people. There is no misrepresentation for these people who trusted me to give me their stories.
You mentioned the targeting and killing of journalists and how, of course, that must complicate things for you and your team.
Amjad Al-Fayoumi, who's one of the most brilliant journalists in Gaza, who's based in Al-Aqsa Hospital. Amjad is a cameraman working on a film that I'm producing. Amjad is following a couple of contributors and their lives. Mainly starting point from Al-Aqsa Hospital, which is the only hospital that's still within its capacity. It had been targeted a couple of times. We live inside the hospitals or sidewalks, but we live around each other. It gives you a bit of sense of safety, I guess. 4 times he went out to film. 4 times. And his tent was bombed. And that's just a journalist sitting in a hospital. Look for the number of journalists who have been assassinated or deliberately killed.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. So we're obviously seeing the last week has been absolutely devastating, even more so than usual with the number of journalists who've been killed, right? So you've seen 4 journalists killed last week. Mohammed Balusha, who broke the news of the babies who were left to die and their rotting corpses were found in the ICU. He was shot in December 2023 wearing a full press helmet and flak jacket. And then he was killed in the few last days. Then we had journalist Mohammed Jabr al-Krinawi, his wife and kids, the Al Jazeera journalist, cameraman Ahmed al-Luh, Iman al-Shanti, 190 journalists so far. I mean, I don't know how you accidentally kill 190 journalists, right, in the last 16 months. I want to ask you, you know, you're now receiving all these accolades, all these awards from your peers here in the UK, internationally. How do you feel about that alongside the fact that so many of your peers in Gaza are being targeted? Do you feel enough is being said by the same people congratulating you?
No, I look for what I can say or how I can represent them there. And for me, any recognition of these recognitions is a recognition for the hardship that they are having. All these recognitions related to the coverage inside Gaza, which heroically they are doing it since 15 months
Right.
now. I did only 6 months. During my coverage, I started in the north part of Gaza, where I am from Jabalia camp. Everything started in Jabalia camp, which no longer exists anymore.
So the camp where you grew up, the refugee camp where you grew up, El Jabalia, is no longer standing. It doesn't exist.
Proudly, they are sharing drone footage when how they annihilate the entire northern part of Gaza, and I don't know why even they are sharing what they are doing. When we are looking for the Israeli soldiers sharing this on social media, how they torch, what they do, blowing house, even wear underwears from females' houses in Gaza, which is like disgusting acts.
Yeah.
And we always were thinking, these people are out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an army. This is just chaotic, out of control people with guns and
right? It looks
weapon.
like a militia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then when you look for the act of, as a state, when they release these videos, being proud that they just made a place that unlivable and they're proud of it and they're happy. If you look for the comments, I was like, just weird.
Yeah. What do you make of it?
I make of it is that it have been allowed.
Yeah.
Since October 7th until now. And it's just clear and clarifying for everyone that Israel as a state is above any law, is above any understanding from all these slogans that we are hearing about as international law. We see how. Do you think that what they are exposing now in Al-Assad regime is doing is away from what's happening in Sidi Timan or other Ofar or
yes, you're saying
Jalameh or all these jails?
The torture we saw in the Syrian jails that's being now denounced widely, we're not really seeing any similar condemnation of the torture that's happening in Israeli prisons.
When you listen to stories from men who have been experienced things that I don't think how they will be out of that trauma and for nothing, for just being a Gazan, and most of them being detained from hospitals or from Norway schools. And worse than that, they have been detained while they're crossing a checkpoint. They have been told to go to cross it. If they are looking for safety. Or other people have been executed when they are crossing the checkpoint.
Right.
My cousin, 2 weeks ago in Jabalia, when this ethnic cleansing started in the northern part of Gaza, have been ordered with a quadcopter to leave his house. When they left, him and his family with other neighbors crossing the street, they just shelled them.
They shelled them?
Yes. He killed my cousin, another 12 people with him. One of his children lost his arm, the other one lost his fingers, his wife had injuries in her back, and it took us a couple of days to grave him. I was reporting the story from the northern part of Gaza, from Kamal Adwan hospital. It was weird since it started, how I need to react, how I just, even the ability to do something there is impossible. Nothing you can do. All what you can do is to hear their stories and to understand that they are alive or not. And imagine the responsibility that I have when I have a cameraman embedded there and the Israelis siege the hospital and they push them out, they take them out, and that report to see the tanks outside the hospital. You see Hussam and the other doctors surrendering for the Israeli army, and people getting women and children being separated, going out. And there is a scene in that report for a dead body, a corpse, in the middle of the hospital. Imagine, I was producing that story, getting us every half an hour, get one shot, few seconds, then another shot, because the internet issue and it's over the phone. We had to smuggle the phone. It's just weird story. That dead body is my cousin. But there's nothing I can do to grave him. There is nothing I can do. They are in the hospital. No one can go out. Tank shelling around the hospital. Everyone saw what happened. And until now, the hospital is being targeted on a daily basis. And
Right.
just a week ago, the Israelis entered the hospital again. And they went out, leaving more than 50 dead body behind them. I was watching how Porek yesterday, my colleague at Channel 4, did that amazing, shocking piece about mass graves by the Assad regime, which is completely shocking.
Yeah.
And when I was looking for it, I felt like how they were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the atrocities
still,
we've seen from inside the Assad regime jails.
It's already happening in Gaza, but we couldn't see all of that because I don't know if people remember or not when after Nasser Hospital withdrawal, when they withdraw from Nasser Hospital, and we were seeing doctors in mass graves with tie-handed.
Absolutely. And there were even children, as I recall, found in those mass graves.
And I really feel bad, and I don't believe it when I saw these mass graves in Syria. And it just take me there. What about the mass graves that we had in Gaza? What about...
Yeah.
Just imagine, for now, there is no coffin.
Yeah, there's
body
no means of shrouding people.
It's just a sense of dignity for someone who died. We cannot provide it. And you don't know. And I can tell you weird stories about the aid mechanism itself when I was working as a humanitarian, also alongside with as a journalist.
Yeah.
It's just inhuman and insane, the amount of control that they are doing. It's basically controlled by a couple of people who are making decisions from Tel Aviv, affecting 2 million lives without putting any consideration of their living conditions, starvation, extermination, call it whatever they call it. And unfortunately, what has really made me go crazy and mad, that people still questioning the terminology of what's going on there, away from that dead bodies that you see on a daily basis for children. And from my perspective, I don't care what you name it. If it's a genocide or it's a war or it's a conflict, or name it. I don't know, people playing cards. But these are children who have been killed and slaughtered because of people playing cards. It's fine.
Exactly.
But as a human being, when you receive this information or these stories, and it's not numbers, and that's what we are always trying to make sure. And
it's your
my coverage,
yeah.
When we release stories, when working stories, definitely most importantly, we need to give them names, age, as much as we can give them information, because this is the only thing we can give them.
Well, speaking, so you mentioned the terminology, and of course, in the last few months, we've seen more and more senior bodies in the world of NGOs, in the world of law, calling this a genocide. Amnesty International have released their report concluding that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians through deliberate killings, causing serious harm, and imposing life-threatening conditions. And they point to genocidal intent. We also saw the European Centre for Constitutional and Human Rights also conclude that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. We've seen reports of these 96% of children in Gaza who feel that death is imminent. Nearly half no longer wish to live due to the unimaginable trauma that they're going through.
No, trust me, all of them don't wish to live. No one would ever imagine himself accepting to live in these conditions.
And I would urge people to watch the documentary you made about the life of the over 20,000 orphans who are now having to survive alone in Gaza now, because I think, again, you were talking about numbers and, you know, how things become a bit abstract. And I think we're definitely there where it's like, you know, oh, we're going to argue about numbers. We're going to argue about semantics and terminology. But really what we're arguing about is whether amputee children should be getting a meal, should be entitled to have clean water, whether pregnant women should be able to access medical care. We're talking about whether elderly people should be left to die, you know, in the most atrocious conditions of things like hunger and curable diseases. I mean, that's really what we're talking about, as you say, beyond the terminology. Let me ask you about impartiality, which of course is at the core of the journalism that we try and undertake. It's why Ofcom regulates the output on TV to make sure that there's balance in coverage. What does balance in coverage look like when you're covering a genocide?
First, I hate this word balance because they've been used a lot, extensively used. Balance, balance, balance. There is no balance here. There is mad Hollywood horror movie on one side, and you have to balance it with, and unfortunately, when they mean balance here, which is not impartial, is you need to have the 2 point of views.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's ideal, yeah. Why you killed all of these people? Yeah, we were targeting Hamas operative in that school or in that whatever.
Yeah.
If you are someone who's grown, understand, smart a bit, you will understand that. What? So these 36 people were killed, 12 women, 15 child, and the response is, well, we are targeting Hamas operative inside the school. For someone who is like aware about what's going on the planet, not in Gaza,
Yeah.
you say like, this is war crime.
So you're banking on the idea that people will be humane enough to recognize
Whenever
the
I face it,
disproportionality of those statistics. Unfortunately, I have to say I'm not as optimistic as you.
I'm not optimistic or related to that. This is inhuman even to think about it, but
Yeah.
this is how I navigate it.
Yes.
And the good thing, when I'm doing storytelling,
Yeah.
basically humanizing people on the ground. So again, giving them names, age, and explaining what's going on, what their experience is, as much as you could, with a sense of humanity.
As somebody who still has family in Jabalia, who still has family in Gaza, and you have to sit in a newsroom with fellow journalists, albeit professionals, and talk about the balance of the coverage of their annihilation. And I'm just wondering how that feels.
It's a bit complicated, to be honest, and there is a huge burden behind it. But I have 2 options, okay? Either be in that edit suite in the newsroom, exposed to all of these scenes, but do my best to be fair for them, or just turn my back. But I'm responsible enough to it's not something easy to observe, especially when I'm here. And loads of stories I was scripting, translating, picking thoughts of what's going on from people I know personally. It's not even just my people.
Yeah.
No, people I know them.
Yeah, because it's a small place.
But this is the options I have. Either I turn my back and have a break and do a really war correspondent job, which is go to PTSD trauma sessions and start to, which is, I respect, I'm not against that, but it's not the time for that.
Yeah.
So these are the options I have. Either deal with my own trauma and be there trying to be fair and reporting and be responsible, be ahead of my responsibility as a journalist, as a Palestinian journalist.
Yeah.
Or just be more professional, or whatever they call it. Maybe more professional and say, yes, I need a break, and I go have some sessions.
Well,
which I will, but not now.
Yes. And I think a lot of the Palestinians I speak to say that the notion of post-traumatic stress doesn't apply to Palestinians because you're not post any trauma.
Exactly.
You're in the trauma right now.
What's more scary is when this finishes. So now it's me covering what's going on in Gaza as part of my coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still in Gaza, my head is there, my family's there, my relatives, my friends, my community, my life. 32 years of my life have been in Gaza. So my coping mechanism now is to report and cover what's going on.
Yeah.
Once it's over,
Yes.
it's gonna be dangerous
Yeah.
on me and on the other journalist who has now. When I think about my colleagues or Ibrahim or Amjad or Hind, or when this war finish, they need huge support. They need the right people around them. They deserve a break.
Yeah.
But
Will they get it? Is the question.
there is no guarantees here.
No.
There is no guarantee that they will get anything.
Well, speaking of guarantees, let's talk about these discussions of a ceasefire that is floating around right now. There's some talk that they're somehow quite close to achieving a ceasefire agreement. My understanding is that the deal that's on the table is very much what the US offered back in January, which was declined at the time by Israel in particular, which has consistently declined all attempts at achieving a ceasefire and, in fact, regularly I think clearly sought to catapult those negotiations. What do you think about these rumors? Are we close to seeing a ceasefire? What do you think of the deal?
So first, I think there is nothing more than the Israelis can do in annihilate Gaza. There's nothing, literally nothing done. Nothing ever in warfare have been done before. They didn't do it. They destroyed the entire Gaza. You're talking about more than 95% of population is displaced. Only one specific areas that have been totally destroyed. If they are looking for what they are doing in Rafah and the northern part of Gaza, where they just do this mass explosion, just leveling entire neighborhoods. And there is no other strategic goals to do in Gaza. Just like killing, destruction. Until when? So on the other hand, people are starving for that.
For the ceasefire?
The Israelis never been serious with a ceasefire. They didn't need it because we had this mad, insane war criminal in a position of power who wanna stay in a position of power.
Yeah.
It's really complicated this time because we have the political scheme in Israel who is far right, who is like extreme radical. It's the most radical government in Israel history.
Yeah, these are ultra nationalists. Yeah.
War criminal.
Yeah. Who's got an ICJ warrant out for him and for his foreign minister, Yoav Gallant.
So they've never been serious looking for any solution for Gaza. They just want more and more destruction to satisfy his mad supporters and the right who is keeping him in power. And that's the issue we were facing mainly.
But are you not thinking, so there's the rumors are that the Israelis want to get a ceasefire done before Trump gets to power, before the inauguration, I should say, of new President Trump. Do you think there's some merit to those rumors? It's almost as if people are suggesting that they're fearful that if Trump comes to power, they might not be able to achieve the same deal.
What I really don't understand it, in those 14, 15 months, you have all of this taking place in Gaza, all the world is watching, and we have all these fucked up leadership for all the
the region,
the planet. They couldn't do anything, and only this clown, he came right at tweet and it's like, before I go to the office, it's gonna be hell on earth, blah blah blah. It's just insane and seriously, it's inhuman when it was just one person decision. So what needed to be done to convince the US that it's enough? We all know that the Americans can make a pressure on the Israelis in one day. They can finish it at the same day. But they would never do it.
But clearly there's a reason they're not doing it, right? And I think let's talk about the basis of the plan as we're currently seeing it, the ceasefire agreement as it's being called. might otherwise be termed the Israeli-Saudi normalization deal, right? Because one of the stages, phase 2, involves normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which is something Saudi Arabia has been pining for in the background and working to get some guarantees of advantages, including, I believe, nuclear power being one of them in the longer term in part of the defense agreement that they're working on with the US. And the third phase, of course, of this so-called ceasefire agreement is, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the US joining together to rebuild Gaza with the PA. As a Palestinian from Gaza, I'd just love to get your thoughts on the region's response.
I wish I can say my thoughts clearly, especially about Saudis, Emiratis, and the Arabic region in general, and their outstanding support for us as Gazans. I wish I have the enough word to show them how grateful I am. I really wish that. When it's not just that, they are giving options for the Israelis who are run out of options. Strategically, they don't have options how to run Gaza, what to do. There's going to be the Palestinian Authority, it's going to be another fragile, fucked up body or whatever it was. The Arabs themselves, if we are looking for the Western world and we are saying they are complicit, I don't know what is the right terminology for the Arabs. I don't know if complicit is not, it's not that they don't deserve it. I really hate what's going on and how the Arabs are just ignoring the reality on the ground and this normalization. I don't fucking care whatever you want. We all know all the Arabs are normalized since day one as governments, and this is not going to affect the people themselves. Whatever you do, people understand. If you ask a child in any of these countries of the Arab world about the cause of Palestine, this is something, that's what I need. But when this unfolds since October 7th, you understand that. Have you ever witnessed a demonstration in an Arabic country?
Well,
a protest?
No, not one that's been met particularly helpfully, let's just say.
Away from American universities in some
indeed.
countries.
Yeah. Well, we saw what happened in the Arab uprisings, whether that was in Syria, in Egypt, or,
It's not about the uprising. People, even here in a complicit environment in the West, people who are supplying weapons to the Israelis. You will see people raising their voice in streets of London talking about a genocide and a war and stop that and hands off Rafah, which is weird to hear until now. Rafah have been exterminated. And the Arab world is not even allowed. It's not allowed to talk about Palestine. In a place like Saudi Arabia, you are not allowed to mention it publicly. And this is how they are trying to impose a new reality on their people.
Totally.
It just, even they are imposing new morals on their people. It's like, no, you have to think about it this way. And this is inhuman. And I don't think, listen, the Arabs have been back at the tail of the world since years because of these kind of people, like MPS and this Mohammed bin Zayed, who is trying to lead. And you will see the competition between them soon.
Absolutely.
Soon. You know, the interest in Gaza is just to be able to talk to the Americans and sit on a political table, because it's not only the oil anymore. Gaza is important for someone like Mohammed bin Zayed or the MPS. They want to normalize with the Israelis. They want to have a peaceful life being with that hidden enemy, which we don't know who, away from Israel, Israel is going to protect them somehow. I don't know. This is how they introduce it to them.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It's weird. I don't know. I don't care.
They need to be protected from this invisible enemy.
And when you talk to any of them, it's like, normalization is our thing. This is something belong to us as Saudis. We decide on it. Yes, but because you don't have any fucking ethics or morals when you say it. Why? And that's my perspective. And even I remember my ex before that, I don't identify myself with Arabism anymore. I'm Palestinian and we stand alone, because that's exactly what happened. We have been starved in Gaza. And I was seeing the Israelis sending back Jordanian tomato because it doesn't match the criteria. And we are starving. We have been starved, and they are seeing people died from malnutrition and in incubators and hospitals. We cannot provide them any medicine. And the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the Arab countries have been complicit in a way that anything was missing
from Israeli markets, they would fulfill it. Imagine that. That's the Arab world. So a normalization, I don't fucking care what they even give for us as Palestinians to normalize. What do you think the Saudis did for us since 1948?
Indeed.
Or the Emiratis? We did for them. I could tell you, we did.
Well, I think this is where it's really dark, is that I think because of what you said about the people. So we know if you go to the ground,
Exactly.
everyone in Saudi, in the UAE, in all of these
That's why
countries,
they are trying to
supports-
impose it on them when you are banning people talking about it. We are not talking about it in the news.
Yeah.
When you see this Al Arabiya channel, which is a Saudi channel, speaks in a Israeli language, even worse than an Israeli channel,
Yeah.
then you think about it seriously. What's going on there?
Yeah.
It's not by force.
Yeah.
If you want to normalize, trust me, they never did anything for us.
No.
Palestine have been occupied in 1948, and it's been less, just annexation for lands, a new reality, then annexation, more new reality, Golan Heights, a new reality, Lebanon, Sheba, all of that. What these motherfuckers did?
Well,
Nothing.
they're about to use, I suspect, the ceasefire agreement that they will try and claim some part in to subdue.
So they
their
will say, we normalize
domestic-
with them to save you.
Yes.
No, don't use me. Go normalize with them. Don't use me. Don't justify it. And trust me, they want to use us on a political table. The Saudis and Emiratis and the Arab in general, they like to sit on a table with important people. They really confuse me what's going on when the Emiratis even trying to provide an alternative solution for the Israelis to run Gaza through Dahlan. It's just insane what's going on.
Tell us about
all
this
of that,
for people who don't know.
All of that, but first of all, the Arab world, the Arab leaders, not the people you will listen. We are Arabs the Arabs have morals. And that contradicts with morality when you're normalized with someone who's just annihilating your people.
Right.
If you consider us Arabs. Otherwise, don't say, we're not Arabs, we are fine, we are Palestinians, we are Canaanites. Fuck off. You are Arabs because of Sykes-Picot. That's your thing.
Tell us about this this alternative deal.
The Israelis, since the beginning of this war, they were looking for a way how to manage Gaza, an exit strategy. What next? Next day in Gaza? That question that have been shared since day one.
Right.
And they never had an understanding for that.
So, but why is everyone vying for control of Gaza? Like, for outsiders who are looking at this and just like, it's a small piece of land. Why are all of these countries trying to meddle in what happens here?
There is two things. There is political perspective, is to sit on the table. It's like, I have influence in Gaza. This is one thing. The second thing, this is the last city on the sea of Palestine. This is the last piece of land we have on the Mediterranean Sea.
And why does that matter?
Do you know that the closest point for the gas fields in the Mediterranean is Deir al-Balah in Gaza?
You don't say.
Gaza. This is another thing. I don't want to go in because it's going to be complicated, but there is lots of interest there, either political, financial, geographic interest. And also everyone want to save the Israelis. Everyone want to be the nicest, closest ally, even from the Arabs.
Yeah. So lots of interests that are competing over what happens, the future of Gaza, and I think it's going to be the next few months will tell us a lot about how there's a sort of reworking of the region that has happened. I just briefly want to get your thoughts on what's been happening in Syria. Unfortunately, the fall of the Assad regime, which I think, of course, is welcomed by everybody of conscience in the world, has also inflamed divisions, at least online and in some circles that I also know in the real world. There's this sort of pitting of the Palestinian cause somehow against the Syrian cause, when actually, as you highlighted earlier, what happens in Syrian prisons happens in Palestinian prisons. And as Egyptians have been saying, it's happening within Egyptian prisons. I mean, this is a wider issue around dictatorships and brutal oppression of people in the region. But how do you, as a Palestinian from Gaza, watching this unfold whilst the genocide is still happening, how do you view recent events in Syria?
I'm really happy for anyone who have a sense of freedom, especially in Syria. That was nice. I loved it, and I wish it would continue for more, because the next day the Israelis carry over the most intensified bombing campaign the human history have witnessed. First day, over 300 sites. The next day, another 100 or more. 80%
Yeah.
of the army were out. They demilitarized an entire country in 48 hours. This is one thing. But I don't think at all there is contradictions between the Syrian cause and the Palestinian cause. Unfortunately, it's not clear the horizon how it will be in Syria. But I want to share their glim of hope now,
Yes.
and I'm just praying that it will continue.
Yeah.
But as a Palestinian, this should reflect positively on me and the reality that I'm facing, because Syrians, Lebanese, Jordanians, Egyptians, surrounding countries is just one nation. So we share their joy, we share their sadness, as we are part of the entire region is
Shared.
so
Yeah. That's the
it's
common...
ruled by dictators in
Right.
general, all the Arab world, with the blessing of the West. Okay, it's
Right.
not that they're just there, no one can do it. We tried before, but everyone saw the Arabic Spring and what happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have influence. People themselves doesn't have influence in their rulers.
Right.
And
Exactly.
somehow these rulers trying to impose their understanding of
Yeah.
how they deal with the political issues on their people, which is something weird. It's not even just enough to be a dictator. No, even the mindset of people, they had to dictate it. And it was like, we will normalize the Israelis, like it or not. Palestinians are saying we didn't help them. We helped them a lot. But now they are saying, we didn't. It's like, even the justification around it is not fair. You have to be clear. You have to say, no, listen, we are a weak country.
Yeah.
And we need to be under a stronger umbrella, which is Israel. It's war criminals. It's fine. We have to be there to feel more safe. From who? We don't know, just in case.
The bogeyman.
That's what's going to happen. That's what's going on. Just in case, let's ally with a war criminal. Let's sit with Netanyahu, who's just a mad dictator.
Yeah.
I think they're similar somehow.
No doubt.
There is loads of similarities between Netanyahu and the Arab leaders. It's just like, it's the same basket. If you go to the Middle East, you have that effect quickly. It's like Hollywood effect. You have the Middle East effect.
I want to ask you about news that really affected me, and I know it affected a lot of people over the last week. That was the tragic news of the killing of Khalid Nabhan, who had become something of a social media figure for a lot of people in the movement. We'd come to see this beautiful man, a grandfather who'd lost his grandchildren and who had continued to go out onto the ground to try and help other children and support relief efforts. And, I think part of what was interesting around the love that Khalid received from the public, God rest his soul, was that we've been so deprived of seeing Palestinian men as people and as what they are, like, just kind men just trying to help and support their families.
Always we are raising. This is the amount of people who have been killed. Women and children. Women and children. 70% are women and children as men. It's just, again, it's inhuman, actually, to be honest. And unfortunately, we had to do that is just to dig more in the sense of humanity that people have outside. It's like, no, if you don't like Palestinians, it's fine. This is women and children. This is just women and children. Systematically targeting anyone who raises a voice or being part of raising an awareness about what's going on in Gaza is something we have been seeing since the beginning of this madness. As an example, Ra'fat al-Arair, who were assassinated in his house, not tank shelling in the street. It's specific, targeted in his apartment.
Right. And just for people who weren't aware, Rifat was in a building block and only his floor was targeted by the missile. I mean, this is about as...
Rifat is academic. Rifat is a writer. He's a poet writer. He's well known for what he's writing. Maybe in Gaza he wasn't really known.
Yes.
Because he writes in English, but he had a huge contribution making teaching, giving a voice for people from Gaza, especially university students. People have the capacity to speak in English because Rafat understand the narrative should change. We need to speak to them using their language. And Rafat was assassinated because of that. And look for the list of academics that have been assassinated and destroyed, the destruction of every university in Gaza, everyone.
Yeah.
Every university have been bombed. And look for the amount of people who have been killed from medics. Like specific, if you look for the list of medics who are targeting, look for the specialties of these doctors and these surgeons. Like they were hunting down medics that our society as a whole rely on them. Not just doctors. Like head of orthopedics, one of the best plastic surgeons in the Middle East. Another one is like, and it's a really long list. And it's not about rebuilding Gaza. Gaza, it could be rebuilt. There's billions of dollars could be paid there around the planet from Western countries or Emiratis or Saudis. But how you can build Gazans, not Gaza. You can make it Singapore. Yes, with money you can make it, but how you can make Gazans feel the sense of living conditions as Singaporean people, that's you never had to do. You'll never be able to do when you expose 2 million people since decades, and then now for 14, 15 months, slaughtering them online. Just showing the world is just watching and seeing everything's happening. And killing and hunting down every academic, every doctor, every medic. If you will go to specific lists, you'll be shocked how specified they are. It's just not over 40,000. This is just the number that you see. If you look for these over 40,000.
Yeah.
Doctors, medics, paramedics, teachers, UN staff.
Yeah.
Journalists. It's human stories also. Children, women, people who have dreams. And now you're talking about rebuilding Gaza and a ceasefire. We're ending this slaughter and then rebuilding Gaza. We need to rebuild Gaza. But again, this is something that anyone can make.
Well, I'm going to do a quick fire round. So these are quick questions with relatively quick answers, if you can.
I speak a lot. I know.
No, it's fine. But the idea is that anytime people post about Gaza online, there are wild things being said in the comments section. Much of it, I know, could be easily debunked. So let me throw a few at you that the internet has obviously been losing their mind over. One of them is, Yousef, Palestinians are free to leave Gaza to Egypt. They can just cross the border through the Rafah crossing, right?
First of all, I don't think they have hundreds of thousands of dollars. When it was an option, and that was an option until April, then the Israelis destroy entire Rafah. They are controlling the border. There is no border with Gaza anymore. The people cannot leave or get in. Since April.
And prior to that, can you just confirm that no one could leave Rafah without formally having the approval of the Israelis?
Previously, when it was an option, it has to be approved by the security departments from the Egyptians and the Israelis. And if your name, the Israeli say he's not leaving, then you are not leaving.
Right. So Egypt doesn't really actually properly control the Rafah crossing. All crossings in and out of Gaza are
security-wise, no, it has to be approved by the Israelis.
Thank you. How can Gaza be under siege since 2005 if it has a border with Egypt and access to a lengthy coastline along the Mediterranean Sea?
Same thing. If you are during the war, want to leave, you have to be approved by the Israelis. It's the same. So the Israelis are imposing this siege. It's not only since 2005, but they tighten it in 2005, okay? But again, our life is controlled. Our food, our electricity, our fuel, our water, our travel, our access is controlled by Israel.
And you can't just take a boat and go out to sea, right?
We have only 3 miles. If you cross 3 miles in the sea, and the Mediterranean is a sandy sea. Even for fishing, it's not enough, but this is the allowed distance, 3 miles in the sea. So more than that, you'll be killed.
But now it's not even 3 miles. But now previously, it was 3 miles that you could go out fishing. And if you if you went 1 centimeter beyond the 3 miles, what
You'll
would
be
happen
killed.
to you,
You'll be
Yousef?
killed. First, the sewage, and even if before that, it's not a luxury life. To work as a fisherman in Gaza is risking your life every day.
Right.
Just as a fisherman, not traveler, okay?
Yeah. What about this one? How can Israel be an apartheid state when Palestinians can get Israeli ID and citizenship, Yousef?
Okay, that's also, this is just a clueless person, as I could say. There's nothing there. No. It's not an option. And also, you have to understand the reality that there is 4 geographic destinations that have been split apart by the Israeli control. We have Gaza, its isolation by the Mediterranean, you have the West Bank, and you have Jerusalem, and you have Israel as a state. But they kept us fragile in these 3 different spots to be controlled and to not be connected geographically, which is beneficial. Well, that's why even Netanyahu office was paying money through areas from Tel Aviv into a Sinwar office in Gaza, and I've been filming inside Sinwar office a couple of times when this money arrived.
And the idea was to keep these separate.
Exactly.
And, just to be clear for those even Palestinians who have Israeli ID, theirs is often withdrawn, right? If they marry someone from the West Bank, it's withdrawn.
Yes.
If they are...
So this is the criteria for people who live inside Israel. It's like there's a couple of cities that have never been exiled or never been pushed out of their villages and cities. Now they are Israeli citizens, but if you're gonna go, it's very complicated.
Yes, but basically, it is not the case that Palestinians can simply get Israeli ID and live, as they wish to.
Even as a Palestinian, your ID number, my national number, is from the Israelis.
Yeah. How about this personal favorite of mine? Palestine never existed because there's no P in Arabic.
Seriously, this has been time reading that comment.
This is honestly, I'm not even joking to you. There are a ton of videos of people going, Palestine can't exist because there's no P in Arabic. And I'm like, it's Philistine with a fence. I guess what I'm saying is there is an entire industry dedicated to trying to argue that Philistine never existed. And
okay, for that person,
yes.
I wish he lives in Israel. I can send you the coordinates in Haifa, and when you have the sewage cover written Palestine 1931, even before his ancestor being alive. So the question is not as it was there or it wasn't now. We are talking about a slaughtering. There is just thousands of people getting killed. There is 2 million people in a really impossible situation, have been exposed to these traumatic events day after day, and year after year, actually. It's not about the duration of...
Right.
We never had a peaceful time in our lives in Gaza. It's always a couple of months where there is some tension, but you're locked inside, you can move freely, there is no drones, there is no bombing anytime, there is...
Yeah.
It depends. Living in Gaza now, it's just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Because as an example, just very quickly, when the Israelis extract 4 hostages from Nusayrat, they killed almost 300 people. These 300 people, not in a combat, they were in the way of the army leaving. They kept bombing, shooting.
They just bombed their way out.
Yes, and they killed 300 people.
300 people.
So it's just you being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, after 14, 15 months, all of Gaza is destroyed. And we are still talking about negotiations.
Imagine. Let me ask you about this one. I don't know if you remember from very early on in the conflict, there was a suggestion by Israelis online that there is such a thing as Pallywood. Have you heard of Pallywood? AKA Palestinians aren't actually injured. There's just a huge studio. Yes, Yousef, this is actually a thing. Pallywood, the idea that Palestinians are just dressing up as doctors and nurses.
I wish.
Imagine.
I wish. I really wish that. Unfortunately, it was real. I really wish that. Unfortunately, it's super real. It's very real. This bloodshed and the screaming of children when you go for an aftermath, I still hear it. And when you... the grief and the eyes of people when they lose their loved ones, especially when you're looking for fathers who lost their children and they felt that they cannot provide a sense of protection for their children. I wish all of that is not real, but it is real. And it is real that we have these kind of inhuman people who believe that we are doing CGI or whatever.
What's your hope for the future of Gaza at this point where we stand today?
Where we stand today, we need to stop this madness. I don't think we have the right to hope or to look for a future, because now it's unlivable place. Even if the war finished now, the death rate will not go down quickly.
Yes.
The spread of disease, the amount of medical supplies that it's available, even the human resources that's available to serve.
Yeah, the Lancet actually suggesting that the death toll might be closer to 200,000 people because of direct and indirect deaths links.
That's another thing to understand. Until now we don't know who's missing, who's alive, who's not, who's detained by the Israelis, because there's no clear number for the amount of people who have been detained, taking hostage now.
Right, Israel's taken over 10,000. I've heard the figure of 12,000.
We don't have an accurate figure. We have figures for missing people, but we don't know if they're missing under the rubble or if they're missing because they are kidnapped as hostages by the Israelis. We don't know.
Yeah.
When this war finished, so that's all of our hope, is this madness to stop. And then we'll figure it out. We'll understand how we'll cope. As Gazans, we always cope and find solutions.
Yeah.
We always adapt. But that's the new reality that we had now in Gaza, when all of Gaza is leveled. This is just on the ground. It's just rubble. We still didn't reconstruct housing since 2008.
Wow.
Okay? In 2014, that's another experience. We had the GRM, which is inhuman system that we have to approve. This house is going to be reconstructed. So this concrete is going to that house specifically. That has to be approved by the Israelis.
By the Israelis, yes. You know, given where we're at, given the last 16 months, what do you want to say to people who are watching this and who are just at a loss now? People have been, marching and writing and boycotting.
I think being involved in the Palestinian cause as a cause have its consequences and its responsibility. It's something that if you are linked to it, you are part of it. We have a role as a generation now. We have a role is to clear the way for the new generation. Now, Israel, with its power, with its immunity, what they are doing, we cannot do anything. If you want to be part of Palestinian cause as a cause, it's not going to finish with this war. So now we are calling and hoping for an end of the war. Directly, we need to start be more active to call for an end of the occupation as a whole. And I don't care if you want to say two-state solution, one-state solution. I want to see Palestine is free for Palestinians and they enjoy their freedom like any other person on this planet. When I came to London, I was really completely surprised and proud when I saw the amount of demonstrations and the protesters was huge. At first when I arrived, it was huge. It gave me hope. And this is the only time we had hope, even when I was in Gaza, when I see the campuses of universities. It gives me hope because we trust in people, we believe in people, and I like people.
Yousef, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Well, that's a wrap for the Tea Season 1 and 2024. Thank you so much to everyone who not only watched today, but has joined us for this season of the Tea. The aim of this series has always been to inform, entertain, but most importantly, to share in-depth discussions around issues that are affecting us all, albeit in different ways. We have loads of incredible topics lined up for the next season of the Tea in 2025, and we're looking forward to sharing it all with you very soon. Please do subscribe here on YouTube, become a member of the Tea community to support us on Patreon, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates on more episodes. From me and all of us at the Tea, we pray for a peaceful end to 2024 and freedom and dignity for all people from Palestine to Congo via Sudan and Syria. Stay awake and look after each other. Thank you for watching.